Just of that, Berto.
Oh my God, someone's done that and they got in
We're
so much
live,
trouble.
yes.
Why? Oh, okay. I want to hear about that.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, bye.
And we're live. Hey, Felicia, we're live. Did you know?
I thought you were going to put us on pause for 2 minutes.
We were going to do that, but then it didn't do that. It was weird.
Charlie, I was pulling up the YouTube just to see, getting my situated. I have a method here. How dare you?
I'm so sorry. This is all my fault.
All right. Scene. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Book Bash. Gish is wonderfully run by a dude behind the camera. I'm so happy to be here. We have an incredible panel for all of you this morning. I probably will never end this panel because these three women are so amazing. They're fascinating. They're funny. And Berto taught us all how to do butthole and sign. It's really, we're all learning. Okay. But we first have a little bit of housekeeping. I would love to spread word. Charlie, can I do this? Can I tell everybody about these wonderful goals?
Yes.
Okay. You guys have raised $38,000 for wheelchairs going to Ukraine. This is so incredible. You are changing people's lives in this weekend. You have so much power in your hands and you've used it for good. Thank you so much. Also, Reading is Fundamental has hit $52,000. And I'm sure Charnaie, who is here you must be flipping out, huh?
So excited for Reading is Fundamental. So thank you.
Yeah. So we are really excited. We want to learn. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that organization later in the panel. But first, let's get to our incredible panelists. I'm going to go down the line and have them introduce themselves because they know themselves best. Karen, would you please start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Walrond. I am a lawyer, author, photographer. I just do a lot of stuff, and I am the author of a book called The Lightmaker's Manifesto, How to Work for Change Without Losing Your Joy, and I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Traci, would you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Traci Thomas. I'm the host and creator of a podcast called The Stacks, where I talk about books with people who love them and read them and write them and think about them. And I write a monthly column for shereads.com, and it's a bookish advice column, which is very exciting. So
very exciting. I can't wait to get some of your book tips on your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And Charnaie, last but never least, would you introduce yourself to the audience, please? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Charnaie Gordon, author, podcast host as well for my podcast called Here We Read, a bookish podcast. I'm also here serving for Reading is Fundamental. I'm a member of their board for their national board for race, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So excited to be here today.
Amazing. All of you, your resumes are so long. I wish all of you could have gone longer. They're really fascinating women. I hope all of you follow them after this wonderful panel. We are combining activism and joy for this panel. And I think that is so appropriate because when we look at the world, a lot of us get despair in our hearts because we see the injustice, we see the unfairness, and it doesn't seem, all of us are working together to change the world. And yet there's always resistance. There's always we're always going backwards a little bit. How were you guys raised to be advocates and keep your advocacy joyful in your lives now? Kara, do you want to start?
Sure. So how I was raised. Well, I'm originally from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And so I am from a place that sort of joy is in our DNA, right? We have a huge carnival, which was actually, a carnival actually started from enslaved people, right? Like if there's anything that talks about joy arriving from activism and from movements, my culture is that way. And so that's one thing, just sort of culturally. Also, my parents have always been activists. They've always, my father was an executive in the oil industry before he before he retired, and has lived all over the world. And wherever he lived, he and my mother always did something to help give back to the communities that were hosting them. And so it's sort of just in our DNA. Like we were, and so much so that I don't know that we ever even really considered ourselves activists. We just, it's what we did. And so I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that's that connection with the community around yourself, around you seems natural. It seems like a natural thing, but a lot of us were not raised like that. A lot of people are not raised like that. They're very much in their own bubble, and that kind of leads them to not think about outside of their own bubble. Charnaie, do you want to tell a little bit about your background and how you became an advocate?
Yeah, so my advocacy didn't come until later in life, when I actually became a parent. And it wasn't something that I was trying to intentionally do either. I had already known, even before I became a parent, that one of the things that I wanted to nail during my parenthood was the reading aspect of it. And I knew that I wanted to read with my children daily. And so that was like my main goal, is I could nail that. I could read books with my kids, every day. And I've been doing that. And my kids are now ages 8 and 9. But that's really kind of how it happened for me. I wanted to instill a love of reading in my children, but then also have this sense of joy and this sense of affirming them for themselves and, loving themselves. And what better way to do that than through children's books? And so that's really kind of how it got started for me.
Yeah, that's so, I mean, now that we talk about Karen and her background and reaching outside of her into the world that she's in, sometimes books are the only way we could do that. We can't get into other people's shoes. We can't get into other people's circumstances or empathize with something that's not familiar to our world unless we have a book to give us that vehicle. And that's a wonderful message. Traci, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into advocacy and joy within your advocacy.
I think that the way that I got into it was my family as well. I come from a mixed race family. My father was Black, my mother is white and Jewish, and coming from kind of two groups that have been historically marginalized in America, as well as two groups that have been historically involved in politics and activism in America, is sort of part of who I am. My aunt was, a Clinton and Obama appointee. So I've always been sort of a part of the political realm, which I think from a young age, I was knocking doors for my aunt. But also as far as the joy aspect goes, my family is very big on community. We were always the house that everyone would come to for every event. We always had random people at holidays. My dad's friend from the bars, cousin, sister's uncle is in town and has nowhere to go. It's like, okay, this stranger is having Passover with us, and what does that look like? And what does that mean? And how are we connecting and hearing other perspectives? And my parents were very big on like, how can we fix whatever the issue is? And so I think I've taken that with me as well. As like, look, I can't solve world hunger, but maybe I can fix this one little thing where I am. And so I've always approached like, how can we fix, who do I need to talk to just do this small moment?
Yeah, that's wonderful, because my next question kind of talks about that, because I feel so powerless when I think about the rainforest, when I think about social injustice, when I think about women and, as I get older, seeing this systemic just things that we fight against, and one person is never going to change it. It makes me feel small and make me want to go inside myself. And so, how do each of you feel that you could overcome that? How do you channel that? Karen, do you want to go first?
Well, one of the people that I interviewed for my book, her name is Valerie Kaur, and she's an activist, a civil rights activist. And she said something that I had never really considered before as far as activism, that really is a little bit depressing, but it's also a little bit freeing. And what she said was that we are individually never going to likely see the realization of the activism of the cause that we're going for. Like, we probably are never going to see a time when racism is gone, when the environment is fully cured. And so she said that the point is not to get to that. The point is progress. The point is just a little bit more and a little bit more, and to have longevity in our activism so that we can take the baton from the people who came before us, and that we can work as long as possible, creating joy on the way, and then pass the baton afterwards. So the point is really the longevity in the work, and what can we do to help just move the baton a little bit farther. And so while it can sound a little depressing that we won't get there, I think it's really freeing to know that your goal isn't to do that. Your goal is just to keep it moving, just to keep moving the progress. And that's been really helpful for me.
Can I add a little bit to that? One of the things, like, I love what you're saying, Karen, and one of the things that I think is improper framing, and I think that there's reasons for it, which we don't have to get into, is that one person can do anything. This idea that like Martin Luther King was the guy, when he was working in community with so many other people, right? Like he was in community with hundreds of other activists and organizers. And so he would go and he would work with SNCC, right? Like it wasn't just him showing up and being like, let's do a bus boycott and change the world. Like, no, he was in conversation with other leaders, other political activists. And that's true for everything. That's true for Black Lives Matter. That's true for environmentalists. And the idea that like Greta Thunberg is the one person doing this work, I think is designed to actually make people feel like they can't do it. To make people sit back, to not realize that like your one little bit of specific activism around, reading to your children is not enough, and that you should feel badly about that, and that you shouldn't continue forward. And so this idea of like progress, yes, but also that if you're doing something good and you're helping people, you are doing the work. Right? Amen. Period. That's right. And if you can link yourself with other people doing the work, that's tenfold, that's 100-fold, and to not be discouraged, because I think that's where people start to feel crappy.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Charnaie.
Yeah, one of the other, an interesting thing. So I have a children's book, a new book that's coming out this August, and it's called A Planet Like Ours. And I co-wrote that with a different author. And it's all about, teaching children to take care of this planet Earth, not just children, but adults too. And when we were writing the book, we did feel really depressed, like, oh, how can we send this message to children? Like, oh, we have to do our part and take care of the earth. Like when you think about just climate change in general, like it's a very daunting, depressing topic because of all of the damage that we've done to this earth. And so we're passing that on to our children. But, it was a very tough time when we were thinking about, okay, how can we make this a positive thing? So it was just a very depressing time when we were writing this book. But, in the end, I think we came out with something beautiful. And, again, it's all about teaching our children to, yes, they can make a difference. We can all make a difference. And like Karen was saying, it's just progress. We're taking little baby steps. Each of us can do that.
Yeah. I mean, what comes to mind when we were talking about this is that, there is this psychological effect that and this is why the charity flyers have that, if you send out a charity flyer and ask for people to give money for starving children, you'll get some money. But if you specifically say, here's a kid named Toby who needs your money, you'll get a lot more money. But that kind of plays against the idea of our participating, because we think we need to be Greta Thunberg, or we're just overwhelmed by the global scope of a problem. And really, it seems like the key is smaller communities working together to do good together, so you don't feel like you're lost in a sea or you need to be a monolith.
And I think that's exactly right. And I'm so glad that both you and Traci were talking about the community aspect of it. But I think another part of it, and this is a part that we often forget because we're so focused on the problem, is to celebrate the progress, right? Like to celebrate those things that we are doing that are actually making. So it's not just only give money for this child or give money for Toby, but also look at what Toby was able to do. Look at how Toby's life was changed, and let's celebrate that. And I think actually Gish is a great example of that, right? Like the idea of putting play and the idea of putting celebration as part of your activism. I mean, that's how you start tapping into that joy and being able to make that incremental change happen.
Absolutely. And when you talk about joy, we are having a panel about joy and activism. How do you incorporate joy into each of your own work? How do how do you take that joy inside you and use as a vector through your advocacy to infect other people with your joy?
I think for me, and I don't know if this is true for the other women on the panel, but I think one of the things that I love most about being Black is that Black people have found a way to find joy in the bleakest and darkest of times. And so for me, I just think that's part of who I am. Like, I am a upbeat, sort of positive person. Not that I don't have very dark times, but just generally I can find the joke, right? Like if there's something horrible going on, I'm like, oh, but I have a great zinger for this moment. And I think that like, I'm not, as much as like the world is depressing and there's so much bad going on, I still make time to have a good time, to make a silly reel on Instagram, to do ask me anything. Like to go out with my friends, to do like, I don't think that joy is antithetical to depression or like to difficult things. I actually think for me, they go hand in hand. Like when things seem really bad, that's the moment where like, I'll be laughing so hard, I'm crying. Right. And like these things can work together and they don't have to be thought of as separate. And that even when you're in doing some really hard work, there is still joy in the work sometimes.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there a sense of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the other thing from what I noticed from my esteemed co-panelists here is we've all found ways to do the thing that we love anyway and figure out how to do it in service, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that that a lot of people, when they think of the word activism, they think it means that you have to put yourself in a position where you're miserable, right? Like, or that you're in danger, right? That you maybe a police dog set on you, or you know, like you're going to get arrested or something like that, which God bless the people who do that for sure. But activism can be so much broader, and it can be things like get really passionate about books and education and putting books in kids' hands. And that's something that you love. So how can I do that anyway? For me, as a writer and a photographer, that's what I love. And I use that as part of my activism. So I think that's the other thing that a lot of times we don't think about is we can tap into the stuff that brings us joy anyway and go, how can this help make the world better?
Yeah. And I think a fundamental thing that I'm getting from your journey and your story is that there's meaning in what you do. And you have a sense of meaning, not for other people. You are showing up and you feel like I mean something in what I do. And I think that's so important in anything. Like I as an artist, like when I was in a Hollywood machine for a while, and I was like, I'm successful, but I'm not happy. And you hear this a lot, especially in the town that I am, in that people are being rewarded socially and they're rewarded with money, but they don't feel like they mean anything. And so tapping into that sense of meaning is so important with anything you do to feel like you're a happy, joyful person. Is there a turning point in any of you guys' life where you felt like, oh, I have meaning and this is why I want to do this? Do you have any sense of that? Charnaie?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a big turning point was getting my kids involved in, their own kind of activism as well, donating books to children in need. And, that to me was a big moment. And it really kind of showed me like, wow, I'm making a difference, not only helping parents and educators and stuff, but also helping my children really see the joy in reading and serving others and being a part of something bigger than themselves. That was like a big moment for me.
Yeah. And I think you tap on something about, there's a difference between joy and happiness. And we don't necessarily get into activism because things are great, right? Because like we usually get into activism because there's a problem where our hearts are breaking about something or we're angry about something. But joy, I think, is deeper than happiness. And I think it hooks into meaning, right? Like I think a lot of when we talk about joyful activism, I don't think you can have it without also tapping into what you're saying with that meaning. Otherwise, it's not true joy, I think.
Absolutely. What are some first steps you would recommend to someone who wants to get involved, but still is feeling a little bit powerless or not able to overcome that first step to really getting involved in something they really care about? What would you advise someone to start? Where would you advise them to start?
I don't have
yeah,
a
go
great
ahead.
answer for
Sorry.
this because this is going to sound crazy. I don't understand that. Like, that is not something that I've ever felt before, that I've seen something that I thought was horrible. And I was like, I'm too scared to get involved because I don't know how to start. But what I would say is that there are probably people in your community doing that work already who aren't, a famous celebrity doing it, that you could email or DM and be like, hey, what do you need? I always ask people when I'm getting ready to partner with an organization or to partner with an activist, I say, what do you need? What would be helpful right now? And I think when you come in with that way, you're not only going to be able to connect to that organizer or that activist in a meaningful way, but you're also going to be given direct action items as opposed to saying, who do I write this check out to? Because when you do something like that, you're sort of saying, I'm only here to give you money, which is often great, but sometimes people need bodies on the ground. Sometimes people need someone to help them organize an event and get chairs for a rally, or to reach out to a local politician or a city council person for a permit. And like, maybe you're great at that and you don't have money, but you have a few extra hours. So no matter what it is, I think starting with how can I help you or what do you need is a really great entry point.
Oh, that's great.
And
Great.
I would actually add to that as well, is getting very clear on what it is that you love to do, like sort of what your skills are, what do people thank you for, what are the things you love to do, and what are the causes that are important to you.
Yeah.
And being sort of loud about the fact that I have these skills, these causes are important. So as you ask for help, people can also, you can help them imagine how you can help. Right? Like a lot of times people will go, okay, well, you can do this. And it turns out it's something that you're really not that interested in doing, or you're not that good at, or you could get burnt out about it. But being loud about, you know what, I'm a photographer. I love this. And, building, helping homeless people. This is a personal example, is something that's really, homelessness is an issue that I'm worried about. And I'm a photographer. And I had a friend who worked for Habitat for Humanity who said, hey, can you come to the ceremonies where we give people their keys and take photographs for them so that they have these photographs for their home? And that was something, and I could write about it. So that was something that tapped into what I love to do. I was loud about it. And also it helped other people who needed help imagine how I could fit in.
That's amazing. Amazing. Charnaie, could you talk a little bit about how you got involved in Reading is Fundamental? Can you talk about their mission and your work with them? Because obviously you say that your child was a vector to your advocacy, which is totally as mine too. My whole life view has changed now that I have a child, because I can find the joy in helping other people more because I'm outside of myself. And I'm happier than I ever have been in my life. Like, honestly, once I got out of my skull and I'm like, I can change and impact a life, and then I can change this life, and I can help just even a little. It's so rewarding. What was your door into Reading is Fundamental?
Yeah, so they asked me actually to be a part of their, as I said earlier, their race, diversity, equity, and inclusion board. And so I've been serving with them since, am I frozen? Oh.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, I thought I froze for a second. I'm sorry.
No, you look great.
Everybody went blank.
That's everybody's panic attack on Zoom, believe me. Or maybe a panel starts and you don't know it and you're just typing, and then you realize, oh, I'm a host and I'm not hosting right now. It feels great.
So I've been serving with them. I think there's like about 6 or 7 other people on the board as well. And we've been doing events like this. We hosted something that Reading is Fundamental hosted. We did a collaboration with We Need Diverse Books. We actually have a member from the organization We Need Diverse Books who's also a member on the board. And so I've been just really enjoying my time. And so I'm just so excited to be here for this event and to continue working with them and all of the great initiatives that they have, especially this initiative that they're doing with Gish.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I don't want to end on this question, but I do want to get this question in before, because I think everybody, me included, probably has somebody in their life, maybe related to them, close to them, who is sadly very fundamentally not in alignment with something that I believe is really important. How do we approach that person with joy, with love, when we hate what they believe or we don't like what they believe? we have some fundamental differences with people who might still be in our lives. How do we approach that person? Do we ignore it? Do we try to have a communication point with them? How do we do that with any kind of joy at all? I don't know why I'm asking you guys. I'm just like, I feel like you probably will have a wonderful answer.
Well, I will say that I have an advocate and an activist who I really admire. Her name is Asha Dornfest, and she's one of my favorite people in the world. And she said to me that she sees activism not as sort of a push and pull, and you need to get to believe what I believe, otherwise I have failed. But she sees it instead of an invitation, that she says, let's talk, and maybe if I can at least get you to walk away going, I never really thought of it that way, that is enough, right? So the point is not necessarily to sit there and argue, you're wrong, you're bad, you're a horrible person, because that's never going to change minds anyway, but to actually have an invitation where we say, well, tell me a little bit more about why you believe this way, and let me share why I believe this way, and maybe we'll walk away with something to think about, and that's enough. So it's to that whole incremental thing that you have to do. I will say I'm very lucky personally. My family and I were all pretty aligned, my parents and everything. So I'm speaking a little bit blind on that, but I did love her take on that. I thought it was beautiful. A really, really interesting take.
Yeah. So each of you is an artist. Each of you is, and we are in a book bash. So could each of you kind of go around and tell the audience a little bit how you put your activism and your joy into each of your work, so we get to know a little bit about it? Charnaie, we've heard a lot about reading is fundamental. Karen, can you tell a little bit about your book and how you are infusing all the things that is Karen into this book to be able to spread that activism and joy to the world?
Well, sure. So the book is literally about activism and how to become an activist, and how to become an activist without burning out, which I think is really sort of the trick, right? And I interviewed so many people, because I love interviewing people. And so I interviewed so many different activists from so many different backgrounds. And they really talked about how they managed to find joy, about how self-compassion and how community is one of the big ways that they find joy. And it's as big a pillar as is actually going out and doing the work or marching or doing everything else. So for me, being able to be a storyteller, which is one of my favorite things to do, either through images or words, that's how I put my activism in this book.
Yeah, and how we did have a couple questions from the audience that kind of dovetails into that, about empathy fatigue and feeling kind of hopeless in the face of it, and working in dangerous areas. Like, how do, especially for the empathy fatigue, you are mentally in danger sometimes when you're working with these heavy subjects and people, and these monumental sort of stakes that are against what you're trying to do, because you're really good at chip the wall, but you're not going to break it individually. Yeah. How do you work with that empathy fatigue?
Well, one of the big things that I think it's that self-compassion is, I have it in the book as one of the end parts of my book, and I wish I had changed it to the beginning. I think self-compassion and sort of being able to take a rest is important, not just for recovery, which it is for that, but also to gather your energy to go back in again. And I always say, if I had written the book now, I probably would have put it at the front, because you want to be able to rest and sort of go into the ebb and flow of everything. Sometimes you're going to go hard. Sometimes you need to take a break. And that's how you develop that empathy or that longevity in the work, is being able to be self-compassionate and take that self-care.
You have to take care of yourself in order to take care of other people.
For sure.
Traci, can you tell a little bit about you have so many, especially literate passions. How do you convey that, your advocacy, also through your love of literature and into your art?
So the show, my podcast, The Stacks, is heavily features, and always has featured, Black authors, other authors of color, queer authors, disabled authors, etc. Books by people from what some might call a marginalized background, which is a term I hate, but I'm still working on something better. But so the show, the content of the show is based on that. And it's based in my curiosity about those things. So I try not to ask the same questions that you're hearing other places, because I think that a lot of times authors who are not white or cis or able-bodied are asked sometimes offensive questions, or sometimes just like boring questions about their work, because that's the mainstream take. But also through the community that I've built on the Stacks Instagram page, we have done multiple fundraisers. Last year, we raised $97,000 for Freedom Reads, which is Reginald Dwayne Betts' organization that puts books into prisons. And again, that started by me messaging Dwayne and being like, hey, could we raise money for you? Would that be helpful? And he was like, sure. And then we got on a call with his team and it was like, what would be helpful? And they were like, yeah, let's do a fundraiser. And in a month, we raised $97,000. So
Amazing.
our goal was 50. So I was emotional.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So I think those are some of the ways, but also we've done phone banks for politics. I'm a big believer in asking people for the help that you need. And so I said, we need to be making phone calls. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Charnaie, could you talk a little bit? So not only you work with Reading is Fundamental, but you are an author as well. You recently you said you did a book about the environment. How else have you kind of put your advocacy into your art?
Yeah, so in addition to all of that, I also am a content creator. So I have an Instagram page called Here We Read, where I recommend diverse and inclusive books, mostly for children. But yeah, I've grown a nice following there.
A huge following. Don't be humble.
Yeah, really.
Gosh.
You're too humble,
She's the
Charnaie.
queen. She's the queen.
But in addition to that, as I said, I've gotten my children involved as well. So they are literary advocates as well. I have a nonprofit called 50 States for 50 Books, where we donate diverse and inclusive books to children all across America. We've been doing that since 2018. And, so far we've donated almost over 7,500 books throughout the United States. And, I have my podcast. So I dibble and dab in a lot of different areas, but everything that I do is always surrounding diversity and inclusion in some sort of way.
That's amazing. It's amazing. You three are all incredible. I want to be respect your time. If you guys could just leave before we tell people where they can follow you and support your work, could you tell just one thing to everybody? What's one small thing that everybody could do every day to be an activist? What's one tiny thing they could do? Is that too tricky a question?
It sort of is a tricky question for me.
It is.
Because what I'll say is that I don't do activism every day.
Right,
like there might be times in my life where I'm busy with taking care of my kids, or like I have a lot of stuff that's going on for work and I don't have time to like organize and do stuff. And then there might be times where I'm spending a whole month raising money for an organization and that's my whole main focus. And so for me, I do think that sort of sometimes leads people to burnout. Like you need to be doing something every day. Sometimes there's nothing to do, or sometimes you have other things to do and you have to be a good person to yourself. So I think like more than anything, my advice would be get really specific about who and what you want to help and work on, and then serve that purpose to the best of your ability. I think when people start thinking about this bigger picture, this bigger idea, racism, climate change, mass incarceration, it's like, okay, what am I going to do? But if you think, great, I found this person I love, they have this organization, how can I help this one small thing? Or there's an event coming up in my town, how can I be working towards that for the next 6 weeks? And then you take a break. Yeah. Like we got to do it together, and it can't be every day, every person feeling like it's their other job. Like it's not going to be successful.
Thank you. Yeah. Karen,
one of the things that I talk about a lot is first of all, I'm a huge journaler. I'm really, really big into journaling. And if one thing that I suggest people do is for, let's just say 21 days, ask yourselves the following 3 questions every morning and just write the answer down. And one is, how can I feel healthy today? How can I feel connected today? How can I feel purposeful today? And it can be like a 2-word check. So how can I feel healthy? It could be, I'm going to go hit it hard at the gym, or I can be like, I'm not going to look at media for an entire day because that's what makes me healthy. How can I feel connected? How can I make sure that I'm connecting with somebody in any capacity? And how can I feel purposeful? What's the cause that's nagging at me that I can do something about? Ask the person, how can I help you? Or write, donate some money or donate something else or learn more about a cause, right? Like whatever that is, and just ask yourself that for 21 days and see what emerges as far as what you think your purpose is going to be and how you can tap into that.
I need you to make that journal and sell it to me
Yeah.
right now. It's beautiful. Charnaie?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is really to just find something local in your own community where you live. I think that's important, at least for me, is just find ways to make a difference where you live. Maybe where, if you have children, where your kids go to school. I know there's tons of different organizations here locally where our family could personally make a difference, even if it's just a small thing where we're just volunteering a couple of hours a week. But I think locally, families can just do this together as a family too, right? That's my big thing is just making a difference where you live. And then if you want to tackle like the bigger issues, go after that.
Yeah, beautiful. Where can everybody find your work?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt really quickly?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Stacey. I can go on for 12 hours. I'm just trying to be respectful.
Yeah.
I know. I want to be respectful too, but there's a question from someone about how they can be safe in their town or community where it maybe is dangerous to do the work that they want to do. And I just really quickly want to speak to that because I think that it's so important. And what I want to say to that person is that, is there anyone else in your community who is interested, affected, impacted by the work that you want to be doing? And is there a way for you all to connect virtually or in person to think about what you can be doing? And then the other part of the question about how to be safe is, who are the people in your community that are allied with you? Because you're not alone wherever you are. I promise you're not alone. And can you all get a WhatsApp situation going? Can you all get, so that if you are going to do in-person activism where you feel like you're putting your body or something on the line, that people know where you are? There are great resources about, protests, about how to keep your body safe with, handkerchiefs and masks and all of these things. And those resources are there. And then the last thing, I'm going to plug a book, which is the last book I thought I would plug today, which is the book is called Know Your Rights and Claim Them. And it's for young people. It was written by Angelina Jolie, Geraldine Van Buren, and Amnesty International. And it's about protest and the rights of children. And in the back half of the book, there's 10 or 20 pages about how to be safe in protest. And this book is speaking to children all over the world, in countries where, children are being sold into child trafficking and things. So it's really looking at how can you be an activist in a place where you're physically not safe. So I recommend that to anybody also. And I just
thank you so much. No. That was a good question. I wanted to get that in and we didn't have time. And I'm so glad that you got it in because that is really important. Charnaie, could you tell everybody where to follow you, where they can find your information and your wonderful art?
Sure. You can find me on most of social. I'm most active on Instagram, and it's Here We Read. It's here on the screen, HERE, and the word we is 2 E's, WEEREAD. And my website, hereweread.com.
Wonderful. Karen, could you tell everybody where to find you?
Sure, this is really tough, but you can find me at Chukalunks, and it's, if you can spell it, if you can say it, you can spell it, at chukalunks.com. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Actually, Instagram, it's heychukalunks.com, or you could find me at my website at chukalunks.com or karenwalrond.com.
What is that word? Did you make? I don't know what it is, and I feel ignorant.
Well, no, you shouldn't. I mentioned that I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad, and we speak English in Trinidad, but it's a word we use to mean sweetheart for children. So like, oh, you're such a little chocolunks. So that's where it came from.
And Traci, can you tell everybody where they can find your work?
Yes, you can find the Stacks on Instagram at the Stacks Pod, on Twitter at the Stacks Pod _, and then the stackspodcast.com. But also you can find the Stacks Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all of those places. So just put in the Stacks anywhere you listen to your podcast, and please subscribe. Thank you.
All of you are so incredible. Like I said, I could go on for 3 or 4 hours speaking to you about everything, but I hope everybody continues to follow all of your work, and I will too. Everybody who is doing the book bash, get back to work. Okay, you have so many wonderful items. I've been searching the hashtag on Twitter, and the Rachel Miner bookmarks are blowing me away. There's so many incredible artists who are working on this, and I can't wait to see all of it. I'm following the hashtag all day. You have a 6 p.m. I guess cutoff. Is that right, Charlie?
So we will be doing closing ceremonies at 6 p.m. Pacific, and then you have until 8 p.m. So you have a little time after closing to continue to do items. There may be last minute items that are put on the list that you have to go and do. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Well, we'll see you at 6. And until then, thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you
Bye.
all. And just so we're all, thank you very much, everybody. I'm just going to do the challenge real quick for this.
Oh, yeah.
panel.
Sorry. Oh, I forgot to do this challenge. Okay, do it.
We would be remiss if we didn't discuss banned books. So I'm just going to put up the challenge for this panel. Each panel has an item, a Gish item. So this one will be fighting. It's an image. So submit an image to us. Fighting censorship and because we like to use 2 ways of saying and. Battling for representation is lit. Stock a little free library with at least 1 banned book or a book by authors from or featuring characters with diverse backgrounds. If you don't have free little libraries in your region, because guess what? This game is in over 100 countries. You may create one or add yours to a local library's inventory. Post a photo of you boldly adding the banned and equity building books into the library and tag StacksPod, which we're gonna, in the item, we will have the correct tagging for everybody here. Here we read, and True Glunks or Hey True Glunks on Instagram. Book, character, costume, not required, but encouraged.
Yay.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Charlie.